Israeli Defense Forces told Reuters and agents from press news agencies in October that it could not guarantee the safety of their journalists operating in the Gaza Strip after assurances were sought that journalists would not be targeted by Israeli strikes. And this is according to a report by Reuters. Most of the reports from Reuters are favorable to Israel and the Israeli Defense Forces. Journalists in Gaza face particularly high risks as they try to cover the conflict during the Israeli ground assault, including devastating airstrikes, disrupted communications, and supply shortages and power outages. And I just want to quote the CPJ program director, Carlos Martinez de la Sernaia. He told you, journalists in New York, since the Israel-Gaza war began, journalists have been paying the highest price, their lives, to defend our right to truth. Each time a journalist dies or is injured, we lose a fragment of that truth. Journalists are civilians who are protected by international humanitarian law in times of conflict. Those responsible for their deaths face dual trials. They need to be tried on two grounds, one under international law and another before history's unforgiving gaze. So, just as we have in Gaza and Israel, this attack on journalists, in India too, 13 of the 28 journalists killed since 2014 were all working on environment-related subjects. Namely, there was seizure of land and illegal mining, particularly sand, for industrial purposes. Several were killed for taking an interest in the so-called sand mafia, an organized crime network that excavates sand illegally for the booming construction industry. And many of these are closely linked to politicians and often protected by these politicians. And the mafia, the sand mafia, is quick to silence journalists who take too close an interest in its activities. Nearly half of the 28 journalists killed in India since 2004. These include media directors, investigative reporters, and correspondents, and they were all working on stories linked to violations of environmental laws. And this is according to a report by the agency called Reporters Without Borders. So, the World Press Day is also an occasion for us to reflect on the threats faced by these journalists, the standard bearers of truth seekers for the priesthood that is called as the press. And we find that there is a lot of, that sometimes we are so busy talking about the freedom of the press, that those who raise their voice loudest in defense of the freedom of the press are its biggest violators, and often it takes us a long time to notice how this happens. For instance, it is amazing that many of the laws, regulations, all these things relating to the press, its freedom, its institutional processes, its international kind of network, all these things have been founded, built, and supported by Western networks and advancements of technology in the West and so on. And yet, when it comes to situations of human rights and democracy in the West, then we find that the Western media is a much bigger offender than the press in developing countries. And for instance, right now, and one can say that the war in Ukraine, in Russia, one can understand the US-led Western countries taking a position against Russia because there is a 100-year project to bring about the breakdown of the Soviet Union. It has been going on since 1917. But now, when you look at Palestine, these people who have set up this International Criminal Court, War Crimes Tribunal, they are all supporting one of the world's biggest war criminals, which is Benjamin Netanyahu, who is also a criminal in other ways under the laws of Israel. And Israel is what? It is an illegal state. But we have come to accept the reality that it will remain there. So solution will be a two-state. Not because Israel is a legitimately created state, but you have to deal with the reality. And Israel can be defined in many ways, but at the least, It is a Western or US military garrison state, pure and weaponized with whatever religious overtones and undertones for having a military establishment at the head of the Arab Peninsula. This is the primary purpose for which this military establishment has been created there. And now, you look at throughout the West, with all the 3 permanent members of the UN Security Council who have veto powers in the West, US, UK and France, there are massive protests on the streets of these countries. Not now, since October, more than 100,000 people on the streets of London protesting. It is not a small, you can get 100,000 people in Gambia around here for. That is not the case in these countries. And in the US, like in 1968, when the shooting of 4 students in Kent State University by the National Guard, it sent shockwaves, not only throughout the United States, but also the Europe. And then we saw the 1968 revolt by students. It began in Sorbonne University in Paris, and then spread through Germany, to the rest of Europe, and also to the US, and so on. And later, of course, there were many kind of consequences of this. One of these was also this hippie movement in the cult that came, which was founded on a quest for peace and so on. So there was a cult for peace, as there is a cult for war today. So you find that what has happened in Columbia University today, the people who are protesting are from all countries, and so in the UK. France has gone even further than the US and UK, but because it is not covered to that extent by the Anglo-American media, we do not know all the details. But in France, even leaders of political parties have already been imprisoned for raising the issue of Palestine and disagreeing with the French government's policy in supporting Israel against the Palestinian people. So today, this one, we have a threat to the press by the very pillars that are avowedly dedicated towards upholding it and defending it. And for us, people in the developing countries, this is a great disappointment, because there were times when we have sought refuge in the columns of the Western press and in the faces of Western media for what could not be expressed in our own media spaces. So when you lose space in the press, long before technology made borders irrelevant, that you can produce in one place, you can disseminate it in a third place, you can have a propaganda in a fourth place. The press was always functioned without, one might say, national chauvinism when it came to issues of freedom and democracy. And this is particularly from the 50s and the 60s, when there were movement for independence and decolonization. Today one finds that the opposite is happening. That in the US, more than in any other country, the press is embedded, not with the Jews, not with the state of Israel, with the Zionists who are waging this war against Palestine. And one finds, because we check these reports, they have been checked, that when it is claimed where a bomb was dropped and it was aimed at 2,000 people, it is reported as an allegation by the Health Ministry of Palestine. 2 months later, the New York Times confirms this as a report by its own sources. So one can see the truth is that it's not enough to tell the truth. The truth has to be said at that time when it happens. Otherwise, it is not always useful and it doesn't serve purpose of being merely recorded in history. So, why does this happen to us? And we will find that there are different perceptions, that we all have our views today. One of the things social media has done is it has made trolls of all of us. We are all trolls, We don't need to have knowledge, history, context, information, understanding, background, education, nothing. If you can write, you can copy it. If you can't write, you can get it from ChatGPT and put there whatever you want. It need not be your views, it can be the views of even people you don't know. It may not be the view of any person, but just that of a machine. So this being the state of affairs in terms of information dissemination and the functioning of the press, Many of these technologies have become a threat to the press, it has become a threat to public service journalism, which is how I define the press. And particularly to journalists who belong to the earlier generation. There are some of us who are here, it was considered a disqualification to be appointed as a reporter if you came from a particularly wealthy family. Because when I applied for a scooter loan after working as a reporter for 2 years in the Indian Express, first it was very difficult to get a scooter. At that time a Bajaj scooter was, I think, 2,700 rupees or something. There used to be a waiting list of many years. So then one of these chaps said, no, if reporters want, we will give them out of turn, but for each paper, one reporter in 3 months, something like that. Applied for the loan. Editor said, no, they can't give you this loan. At least 6 years you should work and you become senior reporter. I said, no, but he said, no, you buy with your own money. But see, if you come by bus, now other day you reported the story that there are queues outside ration shop because there is no sugar. You hear these things in the bus. You see these when you walk. So if you come in the scooter, you will come from your house to office. But where will you find the news? You will only attend meetings or press conferences. You will not see what is happening around you. So it was considered a handicap to have a vehicle. When I came later in Delhi, I said, no, we want reporters who will do what they are told. So it is better we get reporters, but preferably children from privileged families who come from an air-conditioned bedroom to an air-conditioned office, attend functions, the air-conditioned hall, and go back home. So you will find that there is a lot of privileged people, but that phase is also again changing, because now you will again find that the hard work of journalism is being done by people from the middle and lower classes and also the weaker sections and communities. Of course, we have outstanding people who are from the elite also, for instance, people like Srinivasan Jain and all of that. We are not from poor families, many of us, they are all middle class. But what unites all of us was education. It was not necessarily class or caste, that we share a certain level of education and the perceptions that come from that. And this is a constitutive feature of the press, the kind of people it had, and their education. For all that, now you find in India, of course, we haven't had many protests against Palestine or anything. We've had a few. But the place where I actually saw protests was in Melbourne. I went for these protests, and everybody in my family, they all have these ideas of protests where you go and get beaten up. So, but I went there, I said, what is it? One has to go. First Sunday I went, there were about 5,000-7,000 people for Palestine. And it was really heartening to see the press there. That you had men and women and children that come with their plan, babies at their time. They are not afraid that they will be shot or beaten or humiliated. No. Although the Australian press, large sections of the government are under the influence of Jewish capital. You must remember that the population of Jews in the US is only 3%. But the number of representatives they have in the Senate and the House of Representatives is 7%. Whereas in India, there are large communities who don't have representation in parliament and their state legislature. And by the time I went on the 5th or 6th Sunday, there were 25,000 people. And this was the complexion, the demographic of the crowd. And there were people of all nationalities. I asked many people as an individual, how many, from which country are you, from which? Because for us we have this, this fellow is a Muslim, this fellow is an Arab. And many Indians don't even know the difference between Iran and the Arab countries. They will say, no, Iran is also a Muslim country. No, Iran is Persia, Arab countries are Arab countries. Even these distinctions are not known. And media also doesn't take the trouble to break these things down. So, but in sharp contrast to this, but they were not criminal. They diverted the trams and buses and everything and made it possible. And they made reporting possible. And I was really surprised. Just like we exchanged videos or photos. I sent 2 photos and a couple of videos. I just shared it with my colleagues and they aired it. They said, we didn't get anything. I said, how can that be? They didn't get anything. We have this video from Reuters, AP, Air. Not a single video from them. So now in the US we find that protests like in US, France, UK, they have been prevalent. And because of this reality of social media or virtual reality, we all have an opinion on this, or whether there should be protests or not, and what is right and what is wrong. So, this is from where I would like to go to the subject of China and my book which Philip wants me to speak about. So what happens in all these cases is the fitting of facts and truths to our conclusions, our own conclusions, which are based on our preconditioning, our prejudices, our preferences, our likes and our dislikes, where we don't make a distinction between the personal and the public. And that what needs to be done in the public space. See, if I support reservations for Dalits, for example, it does not mean I have to marry a Dalit, I have to appoint everyone in my staff as a Dalit. No. All that it means is that you have to allow him equal access. And if I am choosing somebody for a task, I cannot be guided by his caste. And naturally we all have an inclination to choose somebody who is like us, of our tribe, of our culture, of our family, of our village, of our village. This is a natural human tendency. And especially in all Eastern civilizations and societies, this is a very important. So we need to break out of this kind of merit-based secularization that we have to work for. So this kind of prejudice is no longer confined to people in our midst. Like we might feel threatened by people of other communities, other religions, other nationalities, if they affect our livelihood, our access to education, employment, our cultural practice, and so on. But increasingly, one finds that we have acquired a lot of prejudices and biases without any exposure at all to people and races in very distant countries. The most recent example, before I come to China, to kind of underscore how far we travel from reality without a moment's pause, is the way the whole of Maldives was trolled in India's social media. Somebody said, oh, 70 crore Indians have condemned the Maldives because they said something about Modi. Do 70 crore Indians even know where is Maldives? How many people are there? What Maldives is about? What Modi is? No. So these are the kind of truths that are being manufactured. So my experience is that similar truths are manufactured almost invariably by countries, by developing countries particularly, and by the poorer among developing countries against their neighbors who were even poorer or strong. This is a tendency that I have found in my experience. And whether it is in Nepal, or it is in India, or it is in Pakistan, or it is in Bangladesh, if I ask anybody to point out who is the Pakistani in our midst, or who is the one, nobody will be able to point out. So, it is the same thing when we come to China. And one of my strivings, and Philip will bear me out from that, people who have read me, that wherever I have traveled, whether it is to Germany, whether it is to Norway, whether it is to Pakistan, from the most advanced to the poorest countries of the region like Nepal or wherever, I have always, my striving has been what kind of understanding can you create between these people. About those people in our midst, about our people in their midst. So the states may have reason, a state or a government, they have their military, they have reason for war and conflict. But because there is a conflict of interests, or even conflict over territory, there is no need for conflict between individuals, for fomenting hatred, for building prejudice. After all, Modi is able to go and bring Nawaz Sharif on his birthday. Why should you hate a Pakistani fruit seller here? If you bring good mangoes, you should buy it and enjoy it. So leadership is about that. All the Indian generals and the Pakistani generals, they were all mates in the Sandhurst Military College in London. Maybe today they are all don't go. And here I have addressed the National Defence College in Delhi. There are generals from all our neighboring countries who come here. And for instance, it's very strange that military officers from Sri Lanka, they don't go to the defense college in Wellington. People from Pakistan can go there, from Nepal everywhere, because Tamil Nadu will object to Sri Lankans coming. How can, so this kind of thing, they are not going to come there and wait or to carry out military exercises with all kinds, both friends and enemies. So, given this context, I want what is common, at the fundamental level, what is common to what I have said about Palestine, about Ukraine, about what is happening in the US, what's happening in here, our neighborhood in China, and the killing of journalists and Islam and everything, is that, and our perception of this, is what I might generally call, this is founded on something that I may call as a cognitive bias. We all have a bias. There are many types of cognitive biases. I think clinical psychologists would say there are 15 or 16 of them. I'm not concerning myself with them or going into an examination of the clinical facts of this. The most important cognitive bias is that the brain simplifies everything. And you want to absorb something in the simplest manner. So if I say a Nepali, Acha, is he a guard or a cook? This is how we will simplify. We used to call all the Nepalese Bahadurs in there. It took us many years to learn that they don't want to be called Bahadur. There was an ambassador, a Nepali ambassador called Beg Bahadur Thapa. He was finance secretary and governor of Nepal Central Bank when he was 32 years old. One of the distinguished diplomats in the world. He was there at the UN. He was UN's coordinating ambassador in Sri Lanka, everything. His name was Beg Bahadur Thapa. So when I went to meet him the first time, I asked the secretary who was a Nepali girl. Just at the Binaries, I may not have done. So I said, how should I address it? He said, no, you can call him Mr. Beg Thapa. Like Bahadur is not, you don't call somebody Beg Bahadur. So at every step we have to learn these things, these practices, adapt ourselves to certain cultural expectations. So this cognitive bias is very simple. And who are these Chinese, it is really astonishing. People who have been with me in school and college, who are working for the biggest companies in this country, who have traveled to several countries and international conferences on diversity, democracy and media. They ask me, but China, can you eat food? You get those cockroaches and bugs in your food. I'm really shocked and scandalized. Well, so it is almost a joke. Of course, if you go to one fooding, to cater to those who go, you have there, it is not the Chinese who are eating it. One fooding will be like this land of Janpas. They will have all these scorpions and everything. I have never eaten a scorpion. Because nobody in India makes a scorpion themselves. So I said, let me try how it tastes. It tastes actually a piece of leather you have taken from your shoe and you have roasted it. Because it has no flesh or blood or anything. So it is just like thick like. So I saw all those foreigners. There is not a single Chinese eating there. And we celebrate all the other East Asian countries. All of them eat these things, these snakes and rats. We have people, communities in Tamil Nadu and Bihar and all that who eat bats. So, and we have the tradition of making fun of people for even harmless things. Like they'll say, oh Madrasi, Konda, this kind of thing. So here it is harmless, a kind of humor. But then when it comes to China, people say Chinese can't go there. We have all these things. So this kind of prejudices are very deep. And unfortunately, national policy is also allowing this kind of to develop. For instance, let us begin with Galwan, which you referred, which is there in recent memory. 2020, there was a kind of a violence carried out on the border against India. There is no doubt that the intruders were Chinese and the invasion was by them. They are the ones who led the attack. Why did they lead the attack? That is a long story. You have to read the agreement on peace and tranquility between India and China. And Prem Shankar Jha, who is an authority on this, he has written 3 articles in the Wire, where he has explained there were provocations from India. Peace and tranquility means not only the maintenance of peace and tranquility, but also maintenance of conditions for the sustenance of peace and tranquility. For instance, and there are provoked. And this is exactly what Nehru also did in this forward policy. Every day they would throw about in the media, no, we have moved forward, footstep back. So China decided, okay, we have been taunted enough, let us put an end. This is one. So first thing was that the provocation had reached a stage where they felt they must respond. But I don't believe that. The second thing, why is it that I don't believe that is because in my understanding, as far as I have followed China's rise in the last 20-25 years, China does not want a conflict with any country. Because even if there is no cause for conflict, even if it is not China, the rise of a power will always be resisted by existing powers. The rise of India will also be resisted and treated the same way that the rise of China is being treated. They will not be treated differently by the powers that are seeking to put down China. So this is called the Thucydides trap. So existing powers will always react violently to the very threat or prospect of a new power that is coming. And if you look at the post-war world, the only country which has risen to power is China. The others were finished off just short of the peak. Japan almost rose very high. Its economy came close to that of the US. They were exporting more cars than was manufactured in the US. All the technology, electronics, everything. They hammered the yen and they destroyed the yen and they reduced the Japanese again to economic slaves of the US. And from then, the Japanese economy has not recovered. They don't have the surpluses that they had to be. It is an economy of the thrift today, Japanese economy. And more recently, younger people would recall, was the rise of Germany. Germany rose as a power, very strangely, not under the liberals, not under the Democrats, under Angela Merkel, who was a conservative Christian from what was at one time East Germany. And everybody made fun of her. So what is their scientist, boring woman? She married 4 times, what did many find her? This kind of fun people made of her. But she rose. I couldn't read everything about her. But perhaps the first person who followed Willy Brandt and the earlier generation of German visionaries, who said we must have this East-West detente. We will break the wall that divides Russia from the Soviet Union, from the rest of the world. And Merkel rose very high. Obama tried to make her reach to US. She couldn't, he left it at that. Trump did not succeed. And then finally Biden succeeded. He made Germany accept another European country destroying the Nord Stream pipeline in which Germany has invested billions of dollars just to fight Russia for advancing the interests of the US. So you find these kind of things that are happening. So the only power which has risen in spite of all this is China. First. So China, if it had come to a crash, it would not have been for a military adventure. It would not have been to stop a building infrastructure. No. Because infrastructure is being built from the time of Manmohan Singh. And Manmohan Singh had very good relations with China. And very good relations with the US, both of them. And they are building those roads. It is not something thought of by the Indian government. It's a grand plan. They want to have huge highways and all that to match what the Chinese are building in Tibet, right across that Karakoram highway. And so it was none of that. So why did China advance? My kind of deduction is that this is China's way of establishing deterrence. Actually, if you look at it, last April, not 24, 2023. One is, China has plans that, okay, by 2027, we should establish deterrence against India. By 2030, we should establish deterrence against US and NATO in the Pacific, that is Indo-Pacific. And they have achieved it. Why do I say they have established deterrence? Because it proved that a nuclear deterrence is inconsequential. It also proved that He kind of made nonsense of the theory that there cannot be a clash or a war to nuclear power, because both are nuclear powers, and both are ready to kind of down stage, and still there was a conflict. So, and it was a very primitive conflict. They used this with barbed wire. It was a very, very brutal thing that was done the way they killed the people and everything. So, this being the case, the only thing that makes sense is that China was trying to assert that it is a power and it will exercise its military power, and it will make the point that it has kind of established deterrence against India. And the fact that India has not been able to retaliate in the last 4 years, even after Mr. Prime Minister Modi has not mentioned China even once till today since this clash happened. We might say, what does it matter if he doesn't mention it? We all know so many things. He might have the Henderson report on the boundary line at McMahon line. But if the government accepts it and places it in Parliament, then it becomes an official version. Otherwise, it is like any other day. In the same way, unless the Prime Minister says that they have come in or they have carried out this attack, it has no official sign. It will not find a place in the Prime Minister has said nobody has entered and nobody remains inside. It may also be factually correct. And I also believe that is factually the situation, because there is a brigadier who is a Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh who has also said this. What it means that that is true is a different question. I will come to that also. So then Mr. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, has said times without number that we cannot go to war again. There is a bigger economy, there is a bigger problem. Who says this in the modern world? We can't go to war again. Pakistan, we can crush them. But Pakistan says we won't go to war against India, we can't go there. Nobody says that. Why is he saying that? And he is a very seasoned diplomat. So, and a ferocious intellect. So I am really surprised when he says that. Is it an admission of failure of an indirect? And even people who have reviewed my book, one is Mr. Vivek Kattu, who retired as secretary in the MEA. He reviewed my book in the tribune. He also says, I have not adduced any evidence in support of this thing that this is deterrence. But what is the evidence I can adduce? If you ask any retired diplomat, he will not say this on record, he will not write it. Because he will say, unless government says something, what is the record? The second thing why I say that this is deterrent is around the same time, this happened in June 2020. 3 years later, in April 2023, some of you who followed it closely might recall that the US kept raising the bits of militarization in the South China Sea and in the Indo-Pacific. For decades, the US has had only 2 bases around the Philippines. One is Clark Air Force Base, then Surin Crane Air. But now they have increased the number of their bases in the region. And there was an incident where a US aircraft, from that carrier went in Taiwan's airspace, and 2 Chinese planes stopped it. They did not return fire, they did not chase, they did not engage in combat. They retreated. After that, that they shot down that balloon. And Blinken said that he has cancelled his visit to China. Blinken cancelled his visit to China 1.5 years ago, or more. Since then, they are kept Blinken at arm's length, and are humiliated. When they wanted to revive ties, it is not China which wanted, it is the US. They did not welcome Blinken. Then Janet Yellen was the first. Then Henry Kissinger went. And I asked my channel to do a story on what it means for Henry Kissinger to travel. If Prime Minister Modi comes here for even 5 minutes, the Indian government has to spend something like 10 to 15 crores for that. That is the cost of a visit of a Prime Minister. Security, arrangement, paraphernalia. And Kissinger is an international kind of security risk. He is considered a war criminal in large parts of the world. And he's 100 years old. Wherever he goes, there is an air ambulance that goes with him. There are some 16 doctors. All critical medical equipment is there. Okay. Why did Kissinger go? Because if Kissinger goes and talks to the Chinese, you don't have to put long record. He can come back and believe it is not what the Chinese government wants. Again this year, just last fortnight, the person who went was first Scholz, the German chancellor. They made him first meet the deputy mayor of Beijing. He might have asked to meet you or me, he is that low in the hierarchy. They made him meet the deputy mayor of Beijing, one or two others, then the foreign minister met. When Blinken wanted to meet again, they told him, first we have an appointment for you in Shanghai. He was made to meet the party boss in Shanghai. After cooling his heels there for 2 days, he was brought to Beijing. We had to wait again and then. So, all this shows that there is a slight shift in the balance of power. Because today, China is not under attack from the US as it was before. Exports, trade, relations, everything is going on like this. Now, so similarly, what has 2024 done to India-China relations? 2020 Galvan has mainly affected only the people-to-people relationship. And something which I have not said in my book, but I have personally seen it. Both states, neither the Indian state nor the Chinese state, is comfortable with allowing people-to-people relationship to grow like it is in Nepal or Sri Lanka. For whatever reason, they do not want this wall to be broken. The Chinese have been more forthcoming because in China they don't make a distinction. You go there, you will get Chinese food and you will have one halal candy. But in the last 15 years, they have changed. They have Indian kitchens, they give Indian students, PhD students, a room with a bath attached. These are unheard of. Even Chinese scholars don't get it because they want to move people. Today's China is like the Soviet Union and US were in the 70s and 80s and 60s. They used to take people from developing countries, show them around, try to win them over ideologically, their loyalties, get them to come, migrate, give their time. This is what China is doing. And so at this time, for China to have, so what my book sets out is, this is not, I can tell you what this book is about and what it is not about. This is not about bilateral relations. This is not about the relationship between India and China. No. That is also it. Because it's a very important part of the world of China's relations and the world of India's relations. So this is the world of India and China. And when I say binaries, what are these binaries? Binaries are what we have created with our cognitive bias. Black and white, good and evil, democracy and dictatorship, state and markets. So these kind of things that we have. We are tall people, Chinese are short people, we are vegetarian, they eat bugs and cockroaches. So these are all binaries. So breaking out of these binaries, right? It is not black and white, this world of China and there are many points at which India and China discuss. In the nuclear suppliers group, in BRICS, in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And you can come to your own conclusion from the fact that a very insightful comment made on my book was by Sandeep Dixit, who is a foreign affairs writer today for the Tribune, and earlier he was writing for the Hindu. He said that I noticed that four former foreign secretaries have endorsed your book, and at least 3 former ambassadors, and ambassadors to China. So he asked me, does it mean that you have said a lot of things which are true and they agree with it because the limitations of their position did not allow them to say these facts? I said, once I have written the book, it is for the reader's conclusion. I cannot answer yes or no to these questions, because it will compromise my sources, people I not. But yes, I have spoken to a lot of diplomats, scholars, experts. Some of it might be reflected there as they have said. Some of it I have interpreted it. Okay? So if you take it section-wise, I am looking at first what is China's growth. China began with bicycles. That is the image we all grew up with. All black and grey people on bicycles. But when I went to China, what is it? They are building skyscrapers like everything has to be finished tomorrow. Today China is the world's largest manufacturer of automobiles. It has overtaken US and other countries in 2010. So economy is booming. And there were two regimes. Before that was Hu Jintao, then it is Xi Jinping. There is a big difference between these. Hu Jintao, China was more democratic. That is why the Dalai Lama was having dialogue with the Chinese representative at that time. They thought after Hu Jintao it will become more liberal. They were wrong. After Hu Jintao, Xi Jinping came. And everybody thought it will be more liberal because Xi Jinping's father was a victim of many of the faction fights in the Chinese Communist Party and he was in jail. So he did not become a liberal because of that. He probably learned from that the importance to exercise absolute power more ruthlessly than those who did it against his father. So what conclusion from that? So what is the power politics in China? How does it play out against people like Bo Xilai, for instance? Or is it a monolithic society? No, it is not a monolith. Neither the party, nor the government, nor the people. There are no monoliths anywhere in the world. And even less so in China. The Chinese people protest and they will rise. If you look at the report brought out by the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, they will say in small type, there were 130,000 mass incidents last year in so many places. You can investigate from there, you will find out which are the mass incidents. Similar incident like university protests and farmer protests, they're all are there, but you have to go look for them. You won't find it in the papers like you find in many of our countries. So society is in ferment like any development. It is not a normal. People, and when do people rise? People will not rise like when Hillary Clinton went there so many times, Obama, and they made this internet as the fifth freedom. And they were campaigning for Google and everything because at that time they had developed Baidu and they wanted Google out of China. So the US establishment, Google was very much involved with both Hillary's campaign and Obama's campaign. They want, and as long as it suited their business interests, till Google was thrown out, the map it showed was the map in China of India. Only after that, they showed map which kind of conformed to the specifications of the government of India. Earlier it did not, as long as they were doing business. So these are all for reasons of business. It's got nothing to do with Google's loyalty to democracy, open source, nothing like that. So that is another point that I mean. Second thing is you have this economic development. One of the things China has taught, or I learned from China, like after traveling long years in the Western countries, when you go to the West, one of the things we all are amazed at is the development that has taken place. Whether it is housing, water, living standard, education, shelter, public transport, it's really extraordinary. Power, no water scarcity, all these things. But only developing countries where I have found these things, not only as good, but even better and cheaper, is in China. I lived in China, in Chinese summer with 3 air conditioners, a telephone in my room, a service apartment with 2 bedrooms, a television channel with 37 channels worldwide, 2-way air conditioners, gas, water. All of this together for 2 months, I was paying 3,000 rupees. Please tell me how many of you are paying 3,000 rupees, your monthly bill for water, electricity, and even if you take today's rate, it is 5,000 rupees because the yuan is 10 rupees. So, what China has done is, they have made life affordable for the majority of their population. In one of the first books on China in English, which is almost like a cult book, is Edgar Snow's Red Star over China. And after he wrote that book, it became popular. And Edgar Snow himself was part of Nixon's effort to talk to China. And India also during Janata Party time, George Fernandez met Edgar Snow, wanted to see if he could help mediate and so on. So, Edgar Snow makes a very important point, which I have kept as a guiding principle in my analysis of development. He says, there cannot be an absolute judgment of whether Mao's regime or any government will succeed the previous regime is better or worse. If what has succeeded the previous regime serves the larger good of a slightly larger percentage of the people, then it is definitely a superior form of power. By that definition, the Chinese Communist Party is doing more for the well-being of its people than any of the feudal states were doing before. Not only that, there were also questions why the Arab Spring, those revolts, and why didn't it spread to China? I have answered that also, because I was asked to speak on that in India as well as China when I was there. That is because the elections are, of course, democracy, but it is not, elections don't always mean democracy. Democracy might have elections, but you can have elections and you can have not just dictatorship, you can have deprivation also. All South Asian countries have elections. East Asian countries are, you cannot define them as electoral democracies in the sense that South Asian countries are. But standards of living are vastly superior in all these East Asian countries. And similarly in China, no economist in the world will deny that China has done more for the well-being of its people than many elected democracies in the world have been able to. Developing countries, not developing countries. So that is another thing which I bring out in the book. And I also see what my experience. Then I have written about what it is to work in Chinese media. Like I work for this channel called Beyond. So first time I wanted to go to China, the editor said, you want to go? Okay, you go, you've been going. I don't know what is there in China. You won't get any information, there is no free press. What will you do there? How will you get information? But as a journalist, my job is to get information. And my job is to write. Whereas the idea is that you have to be briefed by somebody. I must be briefed by an officer of the MEA or an ambassador, only then it is news. This concept is so deeply ingrained in journalism, especially on writing on foreign affairs. When I am writing on foreign affairs. Many Indian journalists, when they are writing on foreign affairs and covering their Ministry of External Affairs, they are writing on diplomacy, they are writing on bilateral relations, they are not writing on those countries. I have almost written exclusively on those countries. And here, where I am writing on bilateral issues, I have basically kept those chapters aside. So, when I have talked to people, they are experts from both sides. I have attended the briefings by the spokesman of the foreign ministry in Beijing and in Delhi. In Delhi also I have been doing it for more than 10 years. There I have gone there for about 3 years off and on when I was there. I was invited from here before Prime Minister Modi was to go for his first visit. They invited me to do a series of curtain cases. Before Xi Jinping came there, again I was invited. And I've had similar kind of travel to Nepal and some other countries. And the important thing is to first, sometimes it is not possible to decide there is news in something. You have to first take it, then you take it, come back home, then only you realize there is news in this. For instance, I will say the first time I went to China was with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. And so I went, and there was a chap from IAN, one of the agencies. One person had come. He said, China ka khabar hai, every day press release denge wo likhna hai. So that fellow went off to do shopping. He called, that was the editor in chief. He said, junior fellow from Bombay, because you have to wait for a long time. That people thought it's really huge, really huge. If you are sitting here, you have to get up and walk 100 meters to push the water to the other end of it. You have to wait there. For that he called another political front, he asked him to wait there, the company waited. I waited there, I got some Chinese people. People say, China इधर क्या खबर है, कुछ नहीं, वो सब ऑफिशियली रही। वो बाउंड्री के बारे में कुछ नहीं बोला है। Then they got Manmohan Singh's speech was there, the Chinese Academy of Social Science. So he said, no, वो MEA दे देगा हमको, उसमें कर देंगे. I saw the speech there. And Manmohan Singh's speech was breaking new ground for the first time. It stirred a lot of thinking in him. So first, the Chinese have a proverb that there can be only one tiger on a mountain. There can be only one tiger on a mountain. Manmohan Singh said no, there is place for two tigers on a mountain. We can have Asian tigers. And Manmohan Singh floated this idea. He was very modest about the ideas that he floated. There are 100 political flaws and deficiencies Manmohan Singh has. But when it came to economics, perhaps the only head of government in the world who has personal direct knowledge of the economies of not only India but many countries in the world. So when he goes and talks to the Chinese, they have to be very careful of the US, what they tell him about their own economy, because he has a better understanding of that. And he has access to very good minds. Every year of his term, 3 Nobel Prize winners used to come here. Joseph Stiglitz, Martha Nussbaum, Amartya Sen, and used to talk to him. Then I don't think many Delhi newspapers even reported the seminar except the first two. I think he used to report regularly. So he had this knowledge. So he said, and then he said this Asian census. That was the time they floated the idea of Asian census. And after that thing, everybody said, nahi, ye blah blah hai, koi boundary mein nahi hua. So every day these people are only reporting. Today also there was no progress on the boundary issue. The boundary issue was not raised at all. I didn't find that. I said, I have gone there to report. How can I write today also? Aaj bhi kuch nahi khabar hai boundary. I have to write what they discussed, no, not what they didn't discuss. So then I talked to the foreign secretary. I asked for a meeting with the Prime Minister. They said, no, he is not giving a meeting. Because I was on for a tribute, And Manmohan Singh had been reading tribute from before he was 10 years old. So I had the second seat in the flight. No, I had the third seat. The first seat was given to N. Ram of the Hindu because he is also editor-in-chief and owner of the Hindu. The second seat was given to Prabhu Chavda because he was editor-in-chief of the India Hindu. Third was given to me because of the tribute. Then so I asked, sometimes the Prime Minister will call select journalists and give an interview. So they said no. I asked the press advisor, who is an old friend of mine, Sanjay Babu was there. So he said, no, Shastri. I asked, but then I said, I would like to meet Shiv Shankar Menon. Shiv Shankar Menon said, yes, I'll talk to you. But you should not attribute anything to me. You should not personalize it. You write whatever you want without. We spoke for 1 hour, 45 minutes on that. And the people who are in the external spokesman's office, they were very upset. They said, you never asked us. You monopolized. So I asked him first, when was the last time you visited Beijing before this visit? He said 48 hours. What does that mean? Then I asked him how many times you have come. He says, that I can't tell you because it depends on where you will begin marking it as a visit for the year. He said, I have come at least 7-8 times this year before the visit. That means 2007. And we went on January 10th or something. And his last visit to Beijing was January 8th. Because the Chinese will go through every word in every agreement. So I asked him, was it because of the boundary issue? He said, no. It's a misconception. The boundary issue was not at all. That is why I had so many visits. Because we then decided what are the many other tracks on which we can work. Because once you take up the boundary thing, he said nothing else gets discussed. They get stuck on that. The politics of the boundary issue, then the geopolitics of it, then demarcation on the ground. And at one time, demarcation on the ground was attempted when Mr. Ramachandaran was the foreign secretary. But they found after you cannot demarcate on the ground. Because one day the river is flowing like this, next day it is flowing like this, so you don't know where is the boundary, how do you demarcate? There was real problem on the ground, so they gave up that. We didn't discuss the boundary. Then, they said only economic. And Manmohan Singh and Menjiava had a very close relationship. So I said, how did they get close? He said, no. They have met 6-7 times. They have met with the Asia Pacific team. That is when Manmohan Singh made some comment about the Chinese economy. With Menjiava was then the Prime Minister. And due to the Prime Minister, the economic policy. So then they continued this conversation in several other summits. There was a summit in Ekaterinburg. There was another one in Germany. So all the sidelines of this, and then the bureaucracy decided on the economic summit in China, and this itself is an extraordinary breakthrough. And the only thing common to Kerala Club and that meeting is the Menon genes have continued till that time. You know, Shiv Shankar Menon is the Shiv Shankar Menon's grandfather was foreign secretary and ambassador to China. Shiv Shankar Menon's uncle was also ambassador to China and foreign secretary. And then Shankar's father-in-law was Shastri. Shastri was also ambassador to China, and he was the last consul general in what was called East Turkestan, which is today India. So, like China is this genes, he was posted there as a third secretary when he first started his career. So, if anybody knows China in India, and we have very few Ramachandaran. I consider personally, Mr. Ramachandaran to be the greatest expert on China. His books I have on how China sees India and the world. It's like a primer. One should keep it at home if you are interested in China to read it, because all his writings are based on a reading of the Chinese Communist Party's documents. And then it's really an extraordinary book. So I have to go through some of these things for the liking of mine. And my conclusions are my own, like when I speak about that is in conclusion. I have not developed before thesis or anything. So I look at how China's mind is not military, it is primarily economic. How the infrastructure has been built up, how they have moved from bicycles to cars and SUVs. And China has more bullet trains than Japan, although Japan started much before China. And more than one country which has got this thing. It is better to have fast trains and metro from China than from Japan, because its experience, technology, everything is superior and costless. And very quickly. We will have another 10 minutes or so. So, I also look at India and China in the way we were. You know, before 62 odd was. It was not a very comfortable relationship. It was explorative, but with friendly curiosity. Then the 62 war. Then after that, there was a long. Then nothing. Okay. Things were happening behind this. Then in the 80s, Indira Gandhi wanted to revive the relationship. Actually, a lot of things which Rajiv Gandhi did in his first several months in office were all planned in Indira Gandhi's last year. It didn't get done, but he executed. Whether it's a Rangowala Accord, whether it's the accord with in Mizoram, whether it was. So, there was a person called G. Parsati who was India's ambassador to China. And I met G. Parsati before. He used to be chairman of the policy planning committee. He was also a journalist. He was a cricketer. He was an Oxford athlete and so on. Very eclectic character. JNU. He was the founder of JNU, who created it. He was an institution, JNU, non-aligned movement, research institute for the study of developing economies, Indian Institute of Mass Communication. He was an institution builder before people started using the term institution builder for somebody. Extraordinary person. And he was the one who was the brain and hand behind the India-Sri Lanka Accord. And in fact, went so far, there was people told him, no, this is agreeable, you sign. He said, no, I can't sign anything. I am only the chairman of the policy. I have tell the Prime Minister, he will decide whether to sign on. It didn't go to his head. He was very conscious. And he was not very comfortable with Rajiv Gandhi. This thing, and at one time he said, why do I need to stay? I will go to what is there for me? You know, all they get is, they get that phone which is called a wax phone. You know, in which the Prime Minister can call you. You will get that one Katara ambassador car, and if they will pick you up, you can go free to office and back. So, he was recalled from China, and after he came here, Nehru told him no need to go because there is likely to be a war. So that was quite clear that something was happening. But when Indira Gandhi came back, he was given an innocuous position as chairman of the Indian Council of Social Sciences. And he led a delegation of people from ICSS, who were all China's colleagues and who had followed India-China relationship and China-USA. And he was the first person to meet Deng Xiaoping. And that is why Rajiv Gandhi also met Deng Xiaoping. And I refer to that meeting because for the second time there is a reference to how China wanted to settle the boundary issue. The first was Chavanda had proposed it and Nehru had rejected it. He said, they are totally arrogant, you can't deal with them and we will not do it. And actually, contrary to Nehru was actually a hardliner on China. He not a person who made compromises as has been made out today. And actually, if you read some of the books, I haven't put those facts. And this government was leaking. There was the foreign secretary used to be called Director General of the Ministry. He is writing a letter to Nehru. The same copy is sent to the US ambassador even before it is sent to the Prime Minister. All these things are there. So this is how the government was functioning. And the British were getting all these documents even before the Prime Minister took copy. So these are there in other books I have not looked at. So I have looked at, just I just mentioned these things in passing. Then he started the ball. And Rajiv Gandhi was politically naive in many ways, but he had the sense to know that technology and economics is what will determine bilateral relations. And he sought meetings on economic grounds with China. And he had gone there for. And there is an excellent book on that written by a chap called, I forget the name, it is Dragon something now, by a filmmaker, cinematographer. His name is Navroz Contractor. He is a very good friend of ours. He died recently. He was a bike enthusiast. He was in his 80s. And he was the photographer who discovered Parveen Babi, the Indian actress, whom Time put on its cover as the world's most beautiful woman. That photograph was taken by Navroz Contractor. And his description of what his experiences in China are equally beautiful and picturesque. So very well done. The dragon children of his dragon. So they had all gone with Rajiv Gandhi. After that, again there was a sign. So this was all prepared during Indira Gandhi's time. Then Rajiv Gandhi went in 86 or 88. After that, the process has continued. Then high point was Vajpayee's time. So Vajpayee had a very good advisor. That was very He had been permanent representative in the UN. And Vajpayee was so enthusiastic, he wanted to sign saying that on this one China policy. They said, you sign this, then all disputes are settled. He said, okay. Then they expected it next day. Then Rajesh Mishra said, no. Prime Minister will not sign any such thing. So he had that kind of power to hold back the Prime Minister's hand. He said, you can say anything. What to sign, you have to be careful. No signing of that. So, and that is when they had this agreement. And not a shot was fired on the border till Galwan. So I have praised that. Galwan I have attributed it to China is trying to show that it is a power. This is another thing you must understand. China is not, I don't think China is hostile to India. No country is hostile to another. No state is hostile. Each state will protect its interests, that's all. So to have hostility among people is pointless. The US is not an enemy of China. It is negotiating with China. The largest number of foreigners working in China are Americans. I went to Singhua News Agency for an interview when they had offered me a job. There were 450 or 60 white men who had all lost their jobs in 2008 and 9 in Reuters. All those people are working there. And all these Americans with their bad English, this is a job that rightfully belongs to Indians and South Asians. So I have written on this, what it is to work in the media. I have also looked at how their think tanks work, how their newspapers work, and how Indian media treats China, how we report China. Then breaks, how we have conducted ourselves, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and India and Pakistan were members. Uzbekistan called us and told us, see, we don't want this platform to be for a bilateral public again. So it is quite a terrible thing to be told like that. Then, when you look at the nuclear suppliers route, that was a very big kind of controversy. We didn't get the membership, and at all times they said, one country, one country, one country. No, You are not one country at any point of time. It is not my job to say the NEA spokesman is telling a lie. It is not my job to judge. But I have shown that on not a single occasion was China the opponent alone. And it needs to be pointed out again and again that the nuclear suppliers group was created by the United States with its own client states and puppet government after India exploded its device in 1974 for the sole purpose of keeping India out of the nuclear supplies. So if one has to blame, the original sin was committed by the US. And even after the Prime Minister went to Ireland, Switzerland, Mexico, all those countries never supported India's case in law. And actually we got humiliated. Another thing, I have said how Chinese media is used for signaling. And I also wrote about it. But the Indian government, nobody takes journalists seriously. I don't know whether it is good or bad. But in this case, it was definitely bad. Not only me, others are also. China Daily, Global Life, China Radio International. If Modi was to go and meet treason at the SCO on this NSC, all of them said no purpose will be served by this bill. What they were saying is if you come, you will not achieve anything. You will feel humiliated. It will be a setback to even existing ones. I didn't say that, but I said Chinese media is repeatedly signaling that nothing is to be achieved by the Prime Minister. But he went because he believes you go, you have somebody think will change. It didn't happen. And the NSC meeting is there. And the meeting was in Seoul. So before the meeting in Seoul, our foreign minister is in Tashkent, SCO meeting. 2 days later, he is in Beijing. Then, like, during college, during election days, he will stand outside the room, for the results. Standing in Seoul to see how many people have voted for us. This has never happened. An Indian foreign secretary or minister is a very big position. So we have got diminished in the way we dealt with China. I have not used the word that we got diminished, but I have shown how we dealt with them, how they have dealt with us. And Indian media, how it treats China. And there's another important thing. We think that every day China is maligning us. No, they don't give a damn. They are not there in the Chinese media at all. They are of no consequence. And if trade is there, trade today is $130 billion, higher than at any time. Manmohan Singh aimed for $100 billion, but I don't think he ever crossed 49 or 50. But it's after the trouble began in Burma, it has crossed $100 billion. So the reality of the relationship is very different from what the relationship is projected to be. And there is no basis in popular response to what the government is doing. And the people are also not reacting to what the government is doing. Last but not least, I want to say that while in the case of a military conflict, China may lose more than India because it is a bigger economy, it has more at stake. It will not solve any of the problems. I think some kind of a new thinking is required, like Japan and Russia. They discussed something extraordinary, it didn't happen. They said of joint development of borders. So many possibilities are there. You can't take a man and go anywhere. And anyway, people from all countries live on a particular border. And there were efforts to create a forum like that for Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar forum. Because the people living on the borders of those 4 countries there, they constitute a community that is more cohesive than the people of Bombay and Delhi or the people of Madras and Delhi. So you have to look for patterns and rhythms and solutions in those things also, if you want development here and security on the border. So I don't know if I have given you reasons to read the book or not to read the book, but this is what came to my mind and I have spoken. Thank you very much.
You know what kind of work Shastri has done in this book. I'll tell you one secret about this book. When it came to giving a title for this book, he had 4 or 5 titles. And he asked the several people, which should be what is your choice? So that question came to me also. I think I gave this title. Maybe others also would have given it. And I am very happy that he did not come here alone. He was accompanied by Mrs. Archana Shastri. I welcome you on behalf of Kerala Club. She is also a scholar in her own right. I am very happy that she is here with us. And I am very happy to see many new faces. I do not know many of them. But I would like to tell you that in Kerala Club, every Friday we have some program. Every Friday we have some program here. You are most welcome. Now, I would request, we have a meeting also, executive committee meeting after this, so we don't have much time. But I would give 5 minutes for 2 or 3 people to ask a question or, only 5 minutes. Thank you.
The political changes that we talk may change the color, the complexion, the tone or tenor, maybe voice may be raised, the language may be different. But there is no shifting at the core level. So what I can say is, because of the climate arising from certain assumptions, that it is assumed now we have to do China batch. So all the media thinks that if we do this, government and Modi ji will be happy. So this kind of thing is kind of vitiating the climate. There is no climate for a dialogue. So I think there cannot be any visible improvement or noticeable progress in India-China relations until there is a change of leadership in either one or both the countries. There is progress. That's why I said noticeable progress. Every year trade is increasing. Every year more business is coming. And actually this year, China is giving 1,80,000 visas. Just before I came, a person called me. He says that means 5 to 6 lakh trips will be there. But this businessman said, China will benefit from that. We will not benefit. Why? Because there is not a single flight from India to China. So anybody going to China will have to go via Hong Kong or Singapore. So the people who will benefit in any progress that takes place will be the countries that are middlemen. And the comparison I can give is that, Apollo Tyres has a tire factory in Dubai. You know why they have that factory there? So that we can export to Pakistan. Because you can't export from here. So I think something like that will slowly evolve in China too. There are other informal trades that were taking place with China. I used to call them the real business travelers between India and China. There is a market in Calcutta called Pinarpur market outside the city. I think some of you might have gone. You will get t-shirts there for 100 rupees. All this garments come from China. So, and the flight from Calcutta to Kunming, where it was introduced first, they said once a week, then they made it twice a week. At one point, I think they even had daily flights. And these flights were full because they will 30 to 35 businessmen will go from Calcutta. They will not be people like us. They will buy it for so many people, so they would get the ticket for about 12,000-13,000. When I traveled by that route, it cost about 19 or 21,000. So it's a one-off. They buy it in bulk. And the Bengalis who go there, they are paid, I think, 4,500 or 5,000 rupees, something like that. And one day's khacha, their food and all is taken care of. They go to Kunming. There is a hostel there run by Bangladeshis. These people stay there because they get Bengali food. They all speak a little Chinese. So the garments come from Guangzhou in these fast train, bullet trains. They come to Kunming. They will take it down and break it down into several small suitcases of 20 kgs, 30 kgs. And they are all asking every passenger, can you take 5 kgs, can you take 10 kgs? And some passengers will know that they take it, some people won't take it. And that comes here. So I once wanted to work on this. So when I met Pranab Mukherjee at Manipal, I mentioned this thing. So after that he said, no, it's very interesting that you should mention this. I said, but why don't we discuss these things, with this kind of... He said, no, you don't discuss or write about this, because you will be writing about it, that's why that cooperation office. So there's a lot of fact going on like that, there is progress. Yeah.
that you mentioned about China building deterrence. China, I mean, if you see the history, China has border problems with every neighbor, be it Russia, be it Pakistan, Japan, Japan and Hong Kong, even Laos, Vietnam, even Myanmar, Nepal, Bhutan, India, except Pakistan and Afghanistan, I think they have border with everybody. So this building is literally this is something like this China, something like schizophrenic.
Schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia. That everybody they have some problem and they want to build deterrence. Because I mean,
This is a perception. I would seriously say.
but it's based on something.
No, I would recommend a serious exercise for this. Young people might try this. You make a column with which country, how many problems India has, how many problems China has, what is the to and fro, and then you tell.
The problem, I'm saying about broader problems.
Border, no. See, border problem divided into two. One is sea and one is land. China has resolved land territorial problems with all countries except India. Second, on the sea, the only problem in the sea is South China Sea. South China Sea, if you look at it, recently they have revealed some records. That's how it's whole thing revived. During Obama's time, both when he also went to Hangzhou, I think it was the G7 meeting or something there, they had agreed that both countries will demilitarize. Now, if you look at the reports of the South China Sea or even the Taiwan Strait, all the reports only tell you about Chinese militarization. Chinese militarization is undeniable. But where are the reports of US militarization? Why are they not there? No, that's what I'm saying.
That's a different thing. That's a different thing.
So
I'm
that's-
saying that we have even not what we call problems in the Philippines, even Singapore, even Indonesia. No, Singapore, you see this thing,
All countries problems. They may have problems. They may have.
It is something like China is somewhat a wrong state. No, you pick up one problem with everybody.
No, my question is, all countries have problems. The US has problems, almost every country in the world. But because it has 800 or 1,000 military bases,
I'm saying that China has problem with every neighboring country.
so that is the perception. Is it?
Go to the experience.
I will tell you why. Any two countries, any two,
Except Afghanistan and Pakistan, China has more had border problems.
no, no, I would say,
And with maritime problems with Japan, with Taiwan, with Indonesia, with Philippines, everywhere.
so this perception is also there.
It is based on facts. It is not just I'm imagining some.
How many times Japan and China meet in a year? Are you aware?
I'm not about the details.
Are you aware of the volume of business?
I'm not
No,
China.
China, why I am raising this question is, China and Japan, they have
only about the general perception that China has problem with every bordering nation.
No, this is a narrative.
Every maritime bordering nation.
This is a
Why
narrative.
so?
The perception is there, I agree. I don't deny the perception. Perception is undeniable.
So, let's lighten the situation. You were talking about this lizard eating, cockroach eating Chinese of those days. You know, the Chinese used to
Cockroach
eat
eating and
cockroach
lizard,
and lizards. See, the K.P.S. Menon Senior, when he was appointed as ambassador equivalent to China, his predecessor advised him. During those days, you know, the Chinese even used to defecate in the open, in
Yeah.
the Peking. Now we call it as Beijing.
Yeah.
So he advised Menon, if you want to serve in China, you undergo some operation through which you can remove your sense of smell. So this is written in many words. One. Second is this an observation, this doesn't really answer. Our friend, say George Fernandez, one of the giants of Indian political scene. While he was defense minister with the Vajpayee government, before departing office, he said in a press conference with a solemn face that China is India's #1 enemy. He said that to the whole world. He was very courageous enough to say that because he had the material to say that. Maybe politically or defense wise. What we were talking is about the ecosystem or the emotional attachment or people to people relationships and all that. But this is a serious problem. I think it would have changed. But if that has changed, even now China will not give visas to our Arunachal Pradesh people. Arunachal Pradesh people saying that they are Chinese.
Yes.
So they don't need a visa. So that means the system, the thing is lingering on. And we always want a political volcano to be, organic or it's vibrant every time. That may be the reason between model like this. The third is a one person. You touched Palestine, the problem all over the world. Pro-Palestine demonstrations going on. Why don't we, the intelligentsia, differentiate between Palestinians and Hamas? Who has gone and scratched the back of Israel, killing 1,400 persons of Jews? They say one Jew is equal to 1 crore of people. We will not go by till the last man who is opposing us is taken away from this world. So we talk everywhere in the Hamas that they are targeting Palestinians. No, they are targeting the Hamas. And that is a menace.
Even West Bank.
West Bank means that is a collateral damage. I cannot put a bomb on you. When I put that bomb, 3-4 people also die in between that. Anyway, it's a bad thing. Durandam is, this is a bad thing. But when children or people who die are more those who are not connected with the war. That is the weight of every war. So on this I will just...
2 points I will answer specifically. Rest of it is perception and what has come down, what I say here. On the China threat of George Fernandez, I knew George Fernandez, I have been very close to him during the time of the emergency. After that, I have worked with him. Everything, almost, I went very well. And the particular thing, the place where he said this, I was there at that lecture. That was I think it was the D.R. Mankekar Memorial Lecture in the India International Center, where George was delivering the lecture. Okay? And I was there, Ajit Bhattacharya was there, Vijay Varghese, all these people were there. He didn't use the word threat, he didn't use the word enemy. No.
#1 enemy, he said.
No, he didn't use the word enemy. You check the record, you check the record, you check the archives. He has not used the word enemy. He has not used the word enemy. He has said threat at one point while discussing it. Another place he has said challenge. He had a separate seminar on this, which was organized by Ajit Bhattacharya as a director of the Press Institute of India. And Ajit Bhattacharya is a very distinguished editor, Hindustan Times, Indian Express, Times of India, and he was also perhaps, he remains today, till today, perhaps the only journalist in the world for whom the US President gave a farewell party in the White House when he came away from there as Hindustan Times correspondent. So, this was discussed because George himself was trying to meet Edgar Snow and see if he could pave the way for back channel talks with China. In fact, he alone supported Vajpayee in his effort of wanting to talk to China. That is why, out of over-enthusiasm, Vajpayee was told not to go to China, including by his favorite enemy, Subramanian Swamy. He said, if you go, China will attack Vietnam, it will be an embarrassment for us. He said, no. So he just went to Hong Kong. He went to Hong Kong, he could not even get across, and he had to return. The second thing you mentioned was about the
Hamas and
Hamas. Actually, we are making a distinction about Hamas when we are reporting. Not only that, we have repeatedly pointed out in reports that Hamas was a creation of Netanyahu. This was also there. Because when the autonomous administration in Palestine was to come up,
which is the Israeli intelligence, and Netanyahu particularly at that time, Hamas was funded, weaponized and created by them. But it is like LTT.
And out of hands.
No, true. And second thing, see, what Israel has done, it is not just one, they have not stopped with attacking the Hamas in Gaza. They have been killing civilians, hospitals. They have also attacked Lebanon. Okay. And earlier, then the bombing of the diplomatic mission in Syria. Do you know that in 100 years, in not a single war has a diplomatic mission been deliberately targeted and bombed. The only time it happened, as far as I remember, was during the bombing of Belgrade. For 70 days the US bombarded Belgrade, and one of the bombs accidentally destroyed the Chinese embassy. Many people don't believe it is accidental. Bill Clinton was the president. He expressed regret for it. He apologized to the Chinese. He offered reparation. The Chinese refused to accept. And that accident is the only time ever in any war that a diplomatic mission. See, whatever one might say about Palestine, we can have several views because situation of conflict, there are multiple forces involved. What cannot be denied is that Israeli war crimes are undeniable and brutal. And Israeli occupation itself is one of the biggest crimes. One has to read about it to know how Israel came to occupy that. And why I am saying this, I have particularly intimate knowledge of that, not only political, including religious. I am one of only 2 persons outside the West who was chosen to go as an ecumenical accompanier to live in Palestine for 6 months and to actually report on their condition to the World Council of Justice. One of the reservations was that I am not a Christian. The other problem was the other person who was selected, they said he is not only not a Christian, he is even a member of the Communist Party. But he was actually, and they asked us about the Cairo Declaration, about how Vatican has. So I was tested. 1 week seminar, there was a religious code, there was a theological. I had to give all these things. Only then I was selected, and this was not in my young days. This was in 2014. So I have followed this intimately. And I worked with the Palestinians in 78. Okay, so this is from my knowledge of this.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shastri. I want to tell you
I am also biased in favor of the Palestinians, I will say that. Because in China I heard one thing. There was a Palestinian friend, he told me, everything is made in China, Shastri.
Yes.
Only one thing is made in Palestine, courage.
Yeah, thank you, Shastri, for your wonderful speech and your elaboration. And Kerala Club, the president of Kerala Club is also Omjay Yennan. Until recently, he was the president, he was the principal of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, where they conduct in different language courses. The most popular language course that they have is Chinese. Largest number of students they have is for Chinese. That is one thing. And I noticed that even the publisher of this book is
Yeah, I want to.
Yeah.
Mohammed, please stand up. Mohammed.
Institute of Objective
Mohammed is the General Secretary of the Institute of Objective
Yeah,
Studies.
Institute of Objective Studies has published this book. They have some copies here.
The
if
person who
anybody-
is sitting there, he is from Genuine Media and Publication.
Okay, yeah, if anybody is interested in, they can buy the book.
And these 2 girls who are there, they are the social media of the iOS and Genuine Publication.
Oh, okay, most welcome. Now I would request our registrar, Mr. Radhakrishnan, to propose a vote of thanks.
Very good contact with Mr. Shastri Ramachandaran for last 30-35 years. We were friends, and in the link was with the cinema. Because we, as Malayali Film Secretary, I used to invite him and he used to come. And then as Federation of Film Secretary, we had foreign films, and then he used to come. And we frequently meet sometime in India International Center or other places. So I know him very well, and about his book, we had a good chance to present, and he agreed to be there. Because this is a particular day, this is the World Book Day, World Journalist Day, this day. And May 3 is always having certain important things. May 3 is the day where the first Indian film was screened. That you remember that Raja Harishchandra by Dada Saheb Phalke screened on 3rd May. And this is a very important thing. And even Government of India to recognize that Shamarial Committee and recommended that the national award is to be given on May 3. But that was going on for many years. But recently, for the last 3-4 years, due to some technical problems, they could not even complete the screening schedule and this thing. They could not see even 2022 awards. They could not finalize. Only half it is done. The half still it is going to be. So that day is now changed, and committee has recommended May 3 it should be done. Similarly, the World Journalist Day also should be celebrated, and every year now we should think that we should have a function like this every year, and I love to have this thing every year because many journalists are here. If you have any books, you please come forward every year before the day and we can have. And I especially thank Shastri Ramachandaran for giving an elaborate talk on the foreign matters, especially not only with China but with the other neighboring countries and all those things. So we were all very much enlightened with his talk. So how the 1.5 hours went, we don't know. We were just listening to him and should have listened to him for one more hour also, but due to the time lag, we have to stop it. And I thank him once again for enlightening all of us, and I thank you all for coming here and highlighting this today's function. Thank you all once more.